Hi, I'm Claire Mitchell, QC. Welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast. I'm a lawyer who specialises in miscarriage of justice cases, and we're bringing you this podcast because we want to tell you about the women who were accused, prosecuted, convicted, and ultimately executed as witches in Scotland.
I'm Zoe Venditozzi, and I'm a writer who's always had an interest in the witches, and I feel that this dark mark against Scotland needs a reckoning.
The campaign Witches of Scotland wants three things. Firstly, a pardon for all those convicted of witchcraft. Secondly, an apology for all those who were accused as witches. And finally, a national monument in recognition of all those who are affected by this terrible miscarriage of justice.
Over the forthcoming weeks, we'll be talking to a whole host of experts about the history and the modern day connections to the Witches of Scotland. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Witches of Scotland podcast.
Hiya.
Oh, hello. Hi, Claire.
Sorry, I was a bit previous there.
A little bit previous, madam. We're going to be doing this nice little short podcast today to go along with the little short one we did last week, just to keep you interested over the Christmas holiday in this very strange time of ongoing holidayness, it feels like in some ways. But anyway, so today we're going to be talking about a few different issues that have come up in the intervening week and sharing a bit of correspondence from abroad, naming some witches, and talking about some future happenings. So how are you, Claire?
I'm good. I have been looking up, as ever, some people that were killed as witches. And the reason why I say some people is because this week I thought I'd focus on how difficult it is to pin down the number of people and what happened to them by giving us some entries which we now can't trace much detail of. So, for example, the first people I'll speak about today were in St Andrews in Dundee. Their trial took place in 1569. They were all executed, but they were just described alone in the entry as witches.
Literally nothing else, just witches.
Literally nothing else. We do not know names, ages, marital status that they recorded. We simply know that on a date in 1569 in St Andrews, witches were executed. So we don't know if it was 5, if it was 25. That's the problem. Now, even more bizarre, I suppose, for identifying them, if I move on to the next group, which I found, which we know that they went to trial on the 23rd of July 1590. They went to trial in Edinburgh, and they were just described as sundry witches.
I mean, that's just bizarre. Have you come across that listing anywhere else, sundry?
I've never come across sundry witness, like all in sundry. I've never come across that. I have just come across empty spaces. I have come across saying witches or relating people by their occupation or by the name of their husband. I have also come across one here I'm looking at just says 2 witches. So at least it gives an identifier of how many people were involved. I'll give a further example. In Elgin in 1560, there was a trial that took place in relation to witches. Again, it doesn't say how many and it doesn't say what the outcome was. So just thought I want to show a couple. What the problem really is with them is we can't even put names to them, Zoe.
Yeah, and there's no way, presumably, of finding out any more than that, if that's what there is, unless it was mentioned in some other sort of, I don't even know what other notes would they even have where they might have written that down. It's not as if there weren't newspapers as we'd think of them, were there? So it's not even like you could kind of cross-reference or anything.
No, nothing like that. I mean, the Survey of Scottish Witchcraft is absolutely the best resource we have, and obviously we've spoken about that before. But even they are stumped in these instances. They can simply record. They can simply record when they know the names of people. Obviously, record those, but there are clearly instances that weren't recorded. So that's 1 or 2 instances of people that were killed as witches that we simply can't say their names because we don't know what they are. The last one today I thought would be interesting to look at was a person who was a man and indeed a very senior official in Scotland. The Lord himself appears to be Sir William Stewart of Luthrie, And having used that tool once again, Wikipedia, I looked up Sir William Stewart of Luthrie, and it said that Sir William Stewart of Luthrie was formerly the Lord Lion King of Arms. He had been in office for only 6 months when he was taken to the stake, and he was burned at the stake in St Andrews on the 16th August 1569 for witchcraft. The charge against him was of sorcery and necromancy, so he was actually accused of witchcraft. But it is said that the charge against Stewart, though nominally witchcraft, was politically motivated due to his opposition to Moray and his loyalty to Queen Mary of Guise. So there is someone who was executed as a witch under the Witchcraft Act, but it appears, at least it's thought, that what that was for was simply a cover for some politically motivated prosecution.
Quite neat to get rid of somebody, isn't it?
Yeah, as we said before, calling someone a witch and getting rid of them, saying they've committed witchcraft, would be an easy go-to for someone wanting to exorcise their enemies. And that's exactly what appears to have happened in this case. So Sir William Stewart of Luthrie, after less than 6 months in the job, executed for sorcery and necromancy.
And do you think, will he have been strangled and then his body burnt in the manner of other witches?
Yeah, it says that he was burned at the stake. So I imagine that he would have been burned in the same way, namely strangled first and then burned to get rid of his body. So anyway, another person who suffered a miscarriage of justice by being accused of witchcraft and killed, and it appears there underlying that there was a political intent against it. So it shows that even at the highest echelons, I suppose, of society in Scotland, the Witchcraft Act was being used as a way to quell opposition. Alrighty, so we'll remember those people insofar as we can who were convicted under the Witchcraft Act. So a wee reflection, Zoe, I suppose, on the year that we've had. We've had an incredible amount of support from people all over the world, haven't we?
Oh, yes, it's been fantastic. You've listed before all the different countries that have been in touch with us. We've had a fair few followers from North America, and I want to read out some of a letter that was sent to us from a listener in Newfoundland, whose name is Mrs Mennie. And she sent us a letter, really fascinating letter that we both found really quite moving, didn't we, Claire?
Yeah.
It's about her past. So I'm going to read some of the letter out to you. She wrote to Claire, following a relative of hers, Mrs Mennie, in Lauder, who sent her a copy of the article about the Scottish witch hunts Claire had been, I think, interviewed for, and about the campaign sort of more broadly. So she reached out to get in touch with Claire because she found it really very interesting. So she said, I applaud your interest and would like to join the group fighting for the memory of these women. And then Maureen Mennie went on to introduce herself. Now, what's interesting, well, one of the things that's interesting about this is that she is actually Scottish. She is originally from Aberdeen, born in Fyvie, and her husband and herself moved to St John's in Newfoundland in Canada in 1968 with 2 young daughters, when her husband, Ian, was asked to be a professor of physics at Memorial University of Newfoundland in Labrador. They were supposed to stay for 2 years, but they stayed on for good from then. And then basically, when she was in Scotland, before she got married, she worked as an assistant librarian in King's College Library, University of Aberdeen, in research for European libraries in 3 languages. However, as was quite common then, she was dismissed in 1961 as she had married and might become, quote, PWP and therefore unsightly. What does PWP mean? Pregnant?
I don't know.
Pregnancy related thing.
Yeah, it clearly has to do with the fact that she's pregnant, but I don't know. If any of our listeners know what PWP was, please do let us know. It's obviously some phraseology.
I don't know. And so she was told to leave within 3 months of marriage, and there was no recourse in those days to fight for library personnel. So this is Mrs Mennie speaking. I did not have children for 5 years. Now I am 80, feisty, fiery, and love learning according to my daughters, fighting causes all my life. My late husband was very much feminist and joined me in battles for people's rights. To get to the subject of the article, I became a student again last year at Grenfell College in Cornerbrook and joined a 3rd-year class in history. The topic was the European witch hunts of 1400 to 1600. I found the topic fascinating and horrifying at the same time. I was blessed with a wonderful professor, Edwin Bidzina, a specialist in this area. After the novelty of my being 80 in a class of very much younger students, they began to ask me about being a young woman, as we had coffee after a 3-hour lecture, and they were amazed at the nonsense women of my age had to endure, as they thought misogyny in all its forms was really a thing of the past, and that the witch hunts were just history. I told them in no uncertain terms that the misogyny of the state, church, business and health still lurks, the only difference being women are not burned at the stake. She says that she slaved over 3 papers for that course, having been out of formal classes since retiring as a school librarian in 1992. Her main paper was the North Berwick witch trials and the attitude, behaviour and cruelty of James I and VI. Writing that paper made me furious, and I wish then and now that I could right the wrong. I'd also read many papers from authors on the witch hunts of Germany, France and Eastern Europe, as well as Canada and America, and I'm horrified that the church made rules as it sought more power, whatever the denomination. The old and rising again view still thrives, blame the other, people that do not look, live or worship like us. Let's attack the women. We have to bring past times to the attention of modern populations, men and women, to prevent it happening again. And she goes on to talk about having had some experience with the small town that she lives in where Syrian refugee families they helped them to get out of the camps in Jordan and settle there. And she says that there's stories of rampant misogyny and violence against those women, and it just stopped short of hunting them down. So she is very much sort of cogent as we are about the fact that women have not reached parity, and this is still an issue. And if we don't deal with the past, how on earth can we sort of move on to the future? So it's very nice to hear from a listener like that, isn't it, Claire? It means a lot to us.
Yeah, I mean, I was so struck with the fact that, first of all, she had that connection with Scotland, that someone in Scotland had been reading about it and had sent it across to her, sent the actual article across to her. And she was recalling her days. I think she was born in 1939.
I did read that in a strangely sort of censoring way to protect her age. And then, of course, she goes on to say that she's 80. But yes, it was 1999.
I think she's probably, and rightly so, quite proud of her age.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, so she wrote to us, and I was just delighted. In fact, I should say we're now in correspondence with Mrs Mennie. We've had another email from us, and of course we've obtained her authority to read out her letter. So we wouldn't have read anything out without having checked with her first. But she was delighted to be involved. What really struck me was the views of the young people around her that were so amazed by the stories. And she's told us more stories since then, as you know, Zoe, but the stories of being a young woman trying to gain parity with men in the 60s, trying to have a job and stuff like that. And the young people were just absolutely amazed that this was her story and that she was still here doing her stuff and learning with them. And I think certainly from the letter it seems that it really brought home to the students that they were just a blink of the eye away from those circumstances that prevailed where women were so dreadfully second-hand.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because that has been the little bit of negativity that we've had has been from some people saying, you know, just let it go. This is in the past. It's got no relevance to today's society. But I think it does. And I know we've touched on this a couple of times in the past with different guests, but just the fact that the use of the phrase witch hunt is still employed now. It's such a strong shorthand. I think it's used incorrectly almost every single time I've seen it, certainly on Twitter, where people say that they're the victim of a witch hunt, but really that people are often quite perfectly correct in their criticism from my point of view.
The underlying idea of saying this is a witch hunt means I am being wrongly accused of something, but sadly it's repurposed by so many people who are being properly accused of things.
Yeah, who are just really annoying. I mean, not that I would recommend that they are strangled and burnt at the stake, obviously that would be taking it too far, but I do think that people should think a little bit before they use the phrase witch hunt, because it's not actually accurate from what I can see generally.
Well, I think the use of phraseology is so important. I told you that I was going to try and stop using phrases like old wives' tales, did I, Zoe?
Yeah, I've tried to also not use that phrase since you said it to me, actually.
Yeah, old wives' tales seem dismissive, or use it in a way which subverts the popular meaning of it and see how people react to it. You know, if someone says, oh, I'm using this poultice, I don't know whether this will work or not. You say, oh, that's an old wives' tale. It's probably right. I don't know. Do people use poultices nowadays?
No, they actually do. My 15-year-old daughter who's a little bit on the witchy side, I would say. She believes in manifesting and told me the other week, like jokingly, that she was about to go 5D. I'm not really sure what that meant. I think it was something that had been on Instagram. But she was saying to my husband, he said he had a scalp in his finger, and which is a splinter for those of you out with Scotland. And Lola, my daughter, who's 15, said to him, oh, you need to do this. And sort of talked him basically through using a poultice. And I was kind of like, where on earth did you get that from? But she probably follows some sort of old wives' tale accounts on Instagram that talk you through folk remedies, which is better than poking about with the tweezers, probably.
And did it go well? Is the denouement of this story that he's still with us and hasn't got blood poisoning?
Sadly, he's dead. So this maybe not... he's not dead. It wouldn't be the scalp that'd get him anyway, it'd be me. But that's a different story.
Oh dear. Quickly, moving on.
Oh, Herbie is a witch!
We want to thank Mrs Mennie, and we're going to try and get her to be able to hear this on a podcast. So we're going to try and send it across to her, and hopefully she'll be able to get this going. So thank you, Mrs Mennie, from the other women of Scotland here, and we very much appreciate that you're part of the campaign to rid Scotland of its history of witches and bring them back to being women again. We also have been contacted by another lawyer, Zoe, and that is a lawyer who you may, if you've seen some of her social media stuff, she is a fantastic singer and musician, and she has written a song called The Witches of Burgarran about the Paisley witch hunt. We will re-link her video for this. The name of her band are O'Coolians, and they are singing with her in this video. And what she does is recall the story of the women who were convicted in the Paisley witch trials. And I know Julia Campanelli has already liked it. She's already listened to it. So hopefully those in Paisley who are particularly involved with it will also give it a listen. But we would say to everyone to give it a listen, because it's a really, really haunting song. It's a great tune. And it's got one of the most evocative phrases, I think, that I've heard in the whole witch trials, which is someone explaining, may the devil harl your soul through hell. I think that's the right phrase. Harl is presumably a word for hurl, I think, or just another way of expressing hurl. But it's a great tune. Did you enjoy it, Zoe?
Yes, I thought it was very evocative, and it's interesting to see other people's responses, creative responses to the different stories within the witch trials.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'd like to explore more in 2021, is people's artistic responses to this, because all the memorials that are currently up and all the stories that are keeping people alive have been done at a local level. You know, it's people themselves hearing the story and becoming affected by it in a way that they want to creatively express how they feel about it. And I think that this song is a perfect example. I have spoken to Sharon, who is also a lawyer, as it happens, and she, with me, is filled with the feeling of injustice of what happened to these women. And she, very luckily and creatively, is able to put that into a format which is musical. Sadly, for me, that's not one of my creative abilities, one of my many lack of creative abilities. But
Claire, where's your growth mindset on that? This could be 2021 could be the year that you break into your musical career. You're just not a musician yet.
I think the world has enough to deal with a global pandemic without me deciding that this is the year that I start to fill it with song. I think I'm much better, and have been, in fact, I don't know if you have yet, Zoe, been doing my embroidery on my memorial spoon. And
No, not yet.
Not yet. Well, I've realised that the idea that I had to be a great sewer is also something which we're going to have to give up and forget about. So maybe this is the year that I just go through different creative arts and remind myself why I can't do them.
Okay, well, you know, we'll go through that journey together, and we should maybe create some sort of art that would go alongside our podcast. We could do that.
I'm thinking that if we put some sort of art next to our podcast, people would think that we weren't being serious. Certainly me, for sure.
That's true. True. Okay, well, maybe just keep it to the words then.
All righty. Okay. Zoe, we have next week, hopefully, if our timings can meet up, we have Douglas Spear coming to speak to us. Can you tell us a wee bit about Douglas?
Now, Douglas is an archaeologist, and those eagle-eared, can we say eagle-eared? Is it only eagle-eyed? Do eagles have ears?
Yeah, because
Right.
they're very high up and they can hear a rustle or a squeak.
Is that true?
I think so.
Okay, I like the thought of that. Anyway,
I'm really hoping there isn't anyone out there fact checking us, because I think this week's podcast is perhaps going to have.
I think we're moving towards the insanity of this stage of the Christmas experience. I think plus lockdown.
Possibly.
Yeah. Anyway, those of you that have been paying close attention, which is really what I'm trying to say, will have heard us, I think, talk about Douglas Spears a little bit maybe in the past with reference to Lilius Adey down in Coorous, because he is the archaeologist that's been very, very involved with that from the get-go, the recent years, of finding where Lilius was buried and of being very, very involved with Kate Stewart and with the whole movement down there in Coorous. He's a really fascinating guy that knows absolutely tons, obviously, about this. So I'm really quite keen to speak to him and find out what his process was and his take on different angles on it.
Yeah, can we give a shout out just now? See if anyone has a particular question that you'd like us to ask Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
Please do get in contact with us on the socials or by email and let us know. My particular question, really, I want to know about the man who hired the grave robbers to break into her grave. I want to know about him, and I want to know about the provenance of the items that were taken from the grave and how far Douglas has got with that. So I want to know about those areas. But is there anything in particular you want us to ask Douglas about Lilius Adey? Because we have what's probably one of the world authorities on her. If there's any questions you want to ask, now is the time to get in contact with us before we record with him. If our schedule can't work for this week, we'll probably record with him the week after. We're just trying to work out with him just now when would be best to do that. But contact us and let us know, is there something in particular you would like to ask Douglas about Lilius, or perhaps about her accuser as well, whether or not you want to know more about the people surrounding the accusations against Lilius at that time. He might be able to shed more light on that.
Yeah, I'm quite curious to find out if there are any other archaeological issues or anything else that he's discovered or found in Fife to do with witches, if there's anything else that he's been involved with that he could tell us about as well.
Oh, that ties in with Douglas and Kate. Kate was going to speak to Douglas about where maybe to bury, or perhaps bury properly for the first time, Lilius Adey. So perhaps we could ask him about that, because I think that would be in Fife. That might be a whole new monument to a woman accused as a witch. So what have we got planned in 2021, Zoe, for the Witches of Scotland?
Well, we've got planned to have the witches pardoned and an apology and a memorial. That's all we're going to achieve this year. That's the plan.
That's the plan. I know. I mean, as you know, last year we started an International Women's Day last year to sort of raise publicity of what we wanted, and the pandemic shut us down. It appears, unfortunately, that the pandemic might be shutting us down again. Not the podcast, but our putting our plans in motion quickly at the start of the year. But what we are going to do is we're going to start reaching out to politicians, civic groups, women groups, and we're going to start speaking to them about the petition to Parliament, because we want to talk to as many people about it as possible beforehand. So we'd also do a shout out if there are any groups out there, women's groups, not necessarily women's groups, but it's certainly predominantly women that are listening to the podcast. But if there are women's groups out there, or if you're part of a society that you think might be involved in getting behind the petition, putting its support to it, and also if you are politically involved, if you are, or you know, a politician, or involved in local politics in some way, please do get in contact with us, because the more people we have behind the campaign, the more likelihood of success. So if you are in any way politically affiliated, or indeed you just want to, a lot of people have offered their time to assist us with it, and I think that will come later in the process when we are practically campaigning. But at the moment, what we're trying to do is assemble people together who are like-minded in their wish for a pardon for these people. So if you're listening to this and you think I'd like to be involved, do contact us. Do contact the podcast, witchesofscotland.com. Sign up to that. Contact us on Instagram. Contact us on Twitter. And 2021 is the year I think we really get things moving in a practical sense. We've now built up lots of people. We've got thousands of people listening to the podcast. And it's now time that we move on, I suppose, to the next level of our campaign, which is engagement at a political level.
Sounds good to me. Let's just pencil that in.
We'll pencil that in, Zoe. Pencil that in for later on in the year. All right, so I think we'll just wish everybody now, as we probably should have at the outset, wish everyone a Happy New Year.
Oh, yes, that's quite important. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's hope that 2021 is a year where dreams will be fulfilled, or at least, a long weekend away somewhere that's not my house. That would be nice.
So that's just pardoning all the witches and a long weekend. You don't ask for much, Zoe.
No, a little bit of sunshine.
Trying to sneak in something else. Okay. Okay, we look forward to speaking to you when our podcast with experts will be back in action next week. So we look forward to speaking to you next Sunday.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
If you'd like to learn more about the Witches of Scotland, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for our mailing list at www.witchesofscotland.com to keep updated with the campaign. On that site, you'll be able to find how to link with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
It says that Sir William Stewart of Luthry, the Lord Lion King of Arms...
Do you think this is where The Lion King, the film, got its original idea from?
It's possible. It's possible.
Just a massive metaphor for people executed for witchcraft.
It's possible. Let's look that up by watching lots of Disney in the next couple of weeks.